The blade was worth more than the meal, but Thalra Penwood's stomach had stopped caring about worth 3 days ago. She stood at the edge of the firelight, close enough to smell roasting meat, but far enough that the human man tending the spit could bolt for his cabin if she made any sudden moves. The knife in her hand caught the orange glow, its edge still sharp despite everything she had put it through in the past month. It was the last thing of value she owned, the final remnant of the warrior she used to be before her clan cast her out for the crime of mercy. "I am not here to rob you," Thalra said, keeping her voice steady despite the way her legs trembled. "I want to trade this blade for whatever food you can spare." The man looked up from his cooking, and she braced herself for the usual reaction. Fear, disgust, maybe a shout for neighbors who probably did not exist this far into the frontier woods. Instead, his brown eyes studied her with something closer to concern. He was perhaps 30 summers old, with dark hair tied back from a face weathered by outdoor work. Broad shoulders spoke of strength, but his hands remained relaxed on the spit handle. "That is a fine weapon," he said slowly, "worth a lot more than supper. I know what it is worth." Thalra's tusks caught her lower lip as she spoke, a nervous habit she had never quite broken. "But I cannot eat steel, and I have not found game in days." He was quiet for a moment, turning the spit so the rabbit browning on it cooked evenly. The smell made Thalra's mouth water so intensely it hurt. When had she last eaten? A handful of bitter roots yesterday morning. Before that, nothing but creek water and the bark she had chewed to trick her stomach into feeling full. "When did you last sleep?" the man asked. The question surprised her enough that she answered honestly, "I do not remember." He nodded as if she had confirmed something, then did the most unexpected thing. He reached behind him into a wooden crate and pulled out a second rabbit, already skinned and cleaned. Without ceremony, he speared it on another spit and set it over the flames beside the first. "I am Thorne Quillen," he said. "This is my land, such as it is. Sit down before you fall down." Thalra's fingers tightened on the knife handle. "I told you I am not here to beg. This is a trade." "I heard you." Thorne adjusted the new rabbit, then gestured to a log he had clearly dragged near the fire for seating. "But I have been watching you stand there swaying for the past 5 minutes, and I would rather not have a starving orc collapse in my camp. Sit." There was no cruelty in his voice, no mockery. Just a blunt practicality that reminded her oddly of her father, back when she still had a father who would speak to her. Thalra's pride warred with her exhaustion, and exhaustion won. She sank onto the log but kept the knife visible in her hand. She would not be defenseless, even accepting charity. "I did not say I was giving you charity," Thorne said, as if reading her thoughts. "We can talk trade once you have eaten and can think straight. No point negotiating with someone who looks ready to pass out." The rabbits cooked slowly, fat dripping into the fire with little hisses. Thalra forced herself to sit still, to not stare at the meat like a starving dog. She was Thalra Penwood, daughter of the Ironbark clan, trained in the ways of the blade since she could walk. She had fought in 3 border skirmishes and earned her adult name at 16. The fact that her clan had exiled her, that she had been wandering these woods alone for weeks, that she was reduced to trading away her last valuable possession for a single meal, none of that erased what she had been. "You are far from orc territory," Thorne said conversationally, not looking at her as he tended the meat. "The nearest clan lands are 2 weeks north." "I am aware." Thalra kept her voice neutral, running from something or toward something. Neither, just running. He accepted that without pressing further, which was another surprise. Most humans she had encountered wanted to know everything, to categorize her, to determine if she was a threat. Thorne simply rotated the spits and poked at the fire with a stick. The silence stretched, broken only by the crackling flames and the sounds of the forest around them. Thalra's eyes drifted to the cabin behind Thorne, a solid structure of logs chinked with mud and moss. A vegetable garden grew beside it, neat rows protected by a wooden fence. Tools hung on pegs under the eaves, well maintained. This was not some temporary camp, but a home someone had worked hard to build. "You live alone?" she asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded like she was assessing vulnerabilities, but Thorne just nodded. 3 years now. Bought the land from the territorial office, such as they are. Figured I had enough of other people for a while. There was a story there, but Thalra did not pry. She knew about wanting to be away from others. When the first rabbit was done, Thorne pulled it from the fire and set it on a wooden plate. He used his belt knife to cut it in half, then offered her one portion. The meat was so hot it nearly burned her fingers, but Thalra did not care. She forced herself to eat slowly, to chew properly, even though everything in her screamed to devour it as fast as possible. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. Thorne ate his own portion at a measured pace, still watching the second rabbit. "That blade," he said around a mouthful of meat. "Orc forged," Thalra nodded. "My father made it before." "Before what?" She hesitated, then decided there was no point in hiding it. He would learn or guess eventually. "Before I helped a human child who wandered into our territory, got her back to the border safely. My clan considered it a betrayal, helping the enemy. Was there a bounty on the child, a war on? No, but it did not matter. Orcs do not help humans. That is the law." Thalra's voice went flat. "I broke it, so they exiled me." Thorne chewed thoughtfully. "Seems harsh for helping a lost kid." "The clans have long memories, long grudges." Thalra finished her portion of rabbit and had to resist the urge to lick the plate. "Humans have given us plenty of reasons for those grudges. Cannot argue that." Thorne pulled the second rabbit from the fire, tested it, then divided it as he had the first. He handed her another portion without being asked. "But you still saved the kid." She was 7 years old and terrified. "What was I supposed to do?" "Exactly what you did, I figure." Thorne met her eyes directly. "Which means you are not the monster your clan thinks you are for helping, and you are not the monster most humans think all orcs are." Thalra looked away first, discomfited by the casual acceptance in his voice. She ate the second portion of rabbit more slowly, feeling the food settle into her empty stomach like a warm weight. Her head was beginning to clear, the dizzy weakness fading. When they had both finished eating, Thorne leaned back and wiped his hands on his trousers. "So, the knife." Thalra held it up. In the firelight, the blade showed the distinctive wave pattern of orc smithing, the folded steel technique her people had perfected over generations. The handle was wrapped in worn leather, shaped to fit her grip. Her father had presented it to her on her 14th birthday, 3 days before he began training her in earnest. "I will not insult you by pretending I do not need it more than you do," Thorne said. "My own blade broke last week chopping wood. But that is worth more than a couple of rabbits, and we both know it. I told you I cannot eat steel. No, but you can trade it to someone who will give you real value. A weapon like that you could get supplies for a month, maybe more." Thorne shook his head. "I cannot take it just for supper. Would not be right." Thalra's jaw tightened. "I am not looking for right, I am looking to survive another day. Then stay." The words hung in the air between them. Thalra stared at him, certain she had misheard. "Stay," Thorne repeated. "Few days, a week, however long you need to get your strength back. I've got work that needs doing, and an extra pair of hands would help. You work, I feed you and give you a place to sleep. Once you are back on your feet properly, you can decide what to do next. With your knife still in your possession." It was a trap. Had to be. Humans did not just offer help to orcs, not without ulterior motives. Thalra's muscles tensed, ready to bolt into the forest, but Thorne had not moved, had not reached for a weapon. He just sat there looking tired and practical, like a man who had made a reasonable offer and was waiting for a reasonable response. "Why would you do that?" Thalra asked. "Because I need help and you need food." "Because that is a good blade, and I would rather see you keep it than trade it away for short-term survival. Because it is getting toward harvest season, and I am one person trying to work land that really needs two." He shrugged. "And because you saved a human kid when you did not have to, which means you are probably not going to murder me in my sleep for my vegetable stores." "Probably," Thalra echoed. "I will take probably over certainly not." A hint of humor touched his expression. "Look, you do not have to decide now. It is late, you are exhausted. Sleep on it. There is a shed behind the cabin, weatherproof and dry. You can spend the night there, no obligations. In the morning, if you want to move on, I will pack you some supplies for the road and we call it even for the company at dinner." Thalra wanted to argue, to insist she did not need his charity, to maintain the dignity she had left. But the food in her stomach was making her realize just how bone-deep tired she truly was, and the thought of a dry place to sleep was almost as tempting as the meal had been. "One night," she said finally, "and I keep the knife. Would not have it any other way." Thorne stood and stretched. "Come on, I will show you the shed." The structure he led her to was small but solid, built against the back of the cabin with 3 walls of logs and a slanted roof. Inside were gardening tools, sacks of what smelled like grain, and a workbench covered in wood shavings. Thorne moved some of the tools aside and pointed to a clear space. "Not fancy, but it is dry and out of the wind. I can bring you a blanket." "I have managed without," Thalra said, but he was already heading back to the cabin. He returned with not just a blanket but a worn quilt that smelled of wood smoke and summer grass. He handed it over without ceremony. "Fire will burn down in an hour or so. Help yourself to the well water if you need it. It is around the east side." Then he was gone, back into his cabin. Thalra heard the door close but notably did not hear any bar drop into place. Either he was foolish or he genuinely trusted she would not creep in and slit his throat for his supplies. She spread the quilt in the cleared space and lay down, the knife clutched to her chest. Through the gaps in the wall boards, she could see the dying fire and the stars beyond. The forest sounds were peaceful here, undisturbed by any sense of danger. Thalra meant to stay alert, to keep watch, to be ready to flee if this turned into the trap she still half expected. But her full stomach and the relative safety of the shed conspired against her. Within minutes, she fell into the first deep sleep she had experienced in weeks. She woke to gray dawn light and the smell of cooking food. For a confused moment, Thalra thought she was back in her clan's settlement, that the past weeks had been a nightmare. Then memory returned, along with the ache in her muscles and the unfamiliar walls of the shed around her. She sat up slowly, knife in hand, and listened. Voices. No, one voice. Thorne outside talking to himself or maybe to his animals if he kept any. Thalra stood and peered through the wall gaps. He was at the fire ring again, this time cooking something in a pan. The rich smell of frying eggs and wild onions made her stomach rumble despite the rabbit she had eaten last night. She could leave now. Gather her things, which amounted to the quilt and her knife, and disappear into the forest before he expected her to make a decision. Keep moving, stay ahead of whatever came next. But where would she go? South to human territories where she would face suspicion or violence. North back toward orc lands where she was exiled. East or west into unknown wilderness. At least here she had been offered a temporary respite, a chance to recover her strength. Thalra folded the quilt carefully and left it on the workbench, then stepped out of the shed. Thorne looked up as she approached. "Morning. Sleep well, better than I have in some time." It was true, and she saw no point in lying. Good. He used a wooden spatula to portion out the eggs and onions onto 2 plates, then handed her one along with a fork. "So, have you thought about what I said?" Thalra accepted the plate and sat on the log from last night. The eggs were perfectly cooked, the onions sweet and savory. She ate a few bites while she organized her thoughts. "What sort of work?" she asked finally. "Depends on the day. Right now I am trying to expand the garden before winter, which means clearing more land. Trees to fell, stumps to dig out, rocks to move. After that there is always something. Fence repair, wood chopping, hunting, preserving food for the cold months." Thorne ate his own breakfast standing up. "Nothing that requires special skills, just strength and time, both of which I am short on." "You said harvest season is coming." "About a month out. The vegetables will start coming in heavy, and I have got more planted than I can really handle alone. Thought I was ambitious when I put in all those seeds. Turns out I was just optimistic." He said it wryly, with self-deprecating humor. Thalra studied him over her eggs. He did not look like a man with sinister intentions. Tired, yes. Weathered by hard work. But there was an openness to his expression that she rarely saw in anyone, human or orc. Either he was an excellent actor, or he genuinely was exactly what he appeared to be, a frontier farmer who needed help and was practical enough to accept it from an unlikely source. "I am orc," she said bluntly. "If anyone comes by, if you have neighbors, they will have opinions about that. Nearest neighbor is half a day's ride east. Territorial patrol comes through maybe twice a season. As for opinions, people have always had those about me too." Thorne shrugged. "I was a soldier before. Did things I am not proud of, came out here to get away from all that. Figure I have got no right to judge anyone for their past. A soldier." That explained the scars she could see on his forearms, the way he moved with unconscious awareness of his surroundings. "Which war?" "The border campaigns, 5 years back." "You?" "I was young, but I fought in the last 3 skirmishes between my clan and the human settlements to the east." Thalra met his eyes. "We may have been on opposite sides. May have been." Thorne did not look away. "But we are not fighting now. That has got to count for something." They finished breakfast in contemplative silence. When Thalra set down her empty plate, she turned the knife over in her hands one more time, feeling its familiar weight. Then she slid it into the sheath at her belt. "1 week," she said. "I will work for 1 week in exchange for food and shelter. After that, we see where things stand." "Fair enough." Thorne collected the plates. "There is a creek about 10 minutes south if you want to wash up. I will get the tools ready." The creek was cold and clear, running over smooth stones. Thalra stripped off her travel-stained tunic and waded in up to her waist, scrubbing away weeks of dirt and sweat. The water turned her green skin bright, revealing the scars she had collected over the years. A slash across her ribs from a training accident. Burn marks on her left shoulder from a cooking fire that had gotten out of control during a border patrol. The calluses on her palms from sword work. She washed her clothes as best she could and laid them on rocks to dry in the morning sun, then sat in the shallows and worked her fingers through her black hair, picking out twigs and tangles. It was longer than she usually kept it, falling past her shoulders now. In the clan, she had worn it in the traditional warrior's braid. But there was no point in that anymore. When she returned to the cabin, dressed in her damp but cleaner clothes, Thorne had assembled an array of tools. Axes, a saw, a pickaxe, shovels. He handed her one of the axes after a moment's consideration. "Let us see what you can do." The work was hard but satisfying in a way Thalra had not expected. Thorne led her to the edge of his cleared land, where the forest pressed in with saplings and scrub brush. He wanted to extend the garden by another 20 feet, which meant removing everything growing in that space. Thalra fell into the rhythm of it easily. Chop, stack, move to the next tree. Her orc strength made the work go faster than Thorne had probably anticipated. What would have taken him an hour to fell, she could manage in half that time. He noticed but did not comment, just worked alongside her, matching her pace as best he could. They broke for a midday meal of bread and cheese, eaten in the shade of the cabin. Thorne poured water from a clay jug, and they drank deeply. "You are not exaggerating about needing help," Thalra observed, looking at how much they had already cleared. "Told you, too much land for one person." Thorne tore off a piece of bread. "My father always said I had ambition that exceeded my common sense. Guess he was right. Your family does not help you. Dead. Most of them in the war, my father a year after from a fever." He said it matter-of-factly, but Thalra heard the old grief underneath. "No siblings, just me." "I am sorry." "It is what it is." Thorne glanced at her. "Your family, they cannot take you back, even after time passes. Exile is permanent. I broke the oldest law, chose human life over clan loyalty. There is no coming back from that." Thalra kept her voice steady. "My father spoke the words himself. I am dead to them." "But you are not dead. You are here." "Yes, I am here." They returned to work, and the afternoon passed in steady labor. By the time the sun started sinking toward the horizon, they had cleared a substantial section. Thalra's muscles ached, but it was a good ache, the kind that came from useful work rather than desperate survival. Thorne made dinner, a stew of dried meat and root vegetables that had been simmering in a pot over the fire. They ate as the stars came out, and Thalra found herself relaxing in a way she had not allowed herself to do since the exile. There was something peaceful about this place, this simple routine of work and food and rest. "The shed is yours for as long as you are here," Thorne said as they cleaned up. "I put a better blanket out there and an old pillow. Not much, but better than bare ground. It is more than enough. Thank you." That night, lying in the shed with a full stomach and a soft place to rest, Thalra stared up at the dark ceiling and wondered what she had gotten herself into. 1 week, she had said. But even after just 1 day, she could feel something shifting. The constant tension she had carried, the hypervigilance of survival, was beginning to ease. It was dangerous to get comfortable. She knew that. This was temporary, a brief respite before she had to figure out what to do with the rest of her life. But for now, for tonight, she let herself simply be grateful. The week passed quickly, falling into a pattern that felt almost normal. Wake at dawn, eat breakfast with Thorne, work until midday, rest briefly, work until evening, eat dinner, sleep. They did not talk much while they worked, but the silence was companionable rather than awkward. Thorne was not a man who needed to fill every moment with chatter, and Thalra appreciated that. On the 3rd day, she asked him about his soldiering years. He told her about the border campaigns in spare, factual language, describing the fear and chaos without glorifying any of it. He had been a scout, he said, which meant sneaking through enemy territory and reporting back on orc movements. "I spent a lot of time watching orc camps from a distance," he said. "Saw families, kids playing, people just living their lives. Made it hard to think of them as monsters the way the officers wanted us to. But you fought anyway. I was following orders. Does not make it right, just makes it what happened." Thorne drove the shovel into the ground with more force than necessary. "I killed orcs, Thalra. Maybe people you knew. I do not expect forgiveness for that." "I killed humans," Thalra said quietly. "In those same battles, maybe people you knew. We were all following our orders, protecting our territories. The war was bigger than either of us. Does not make it sit easier." No, it does not. They worked in silence for a while after that, each lost in their own memories. But somehow the shared honesty made the silence feel deeper, more real. On the fifth day, Thorne's nearest neighbor did show up, a grizzled older man named Garrett who rode in on a rangy mule. Thalra was behind the cabin when she heard voices and immediately froze. She could not make out words, but the tone was clear enough. Surprise, suspicion, rising anger. She moved to where she could see without being seen. Garrett was off his mule, standing close to Thorne with his shoulders squared aggressive. Thorne stood his ground, arms crossed. "You have lost your mind," Garrett was saying. "An orc on your land. Do you know what people will say?" "I do not much care what people say. She is helping with the work and she has not caused any trouble. Yet, they are violent, Thorne, savages. You turn your back and she will gut you for your supplies. She has had plenty of opportunity, seems to prefer eating breakfast like a normal person." Thorne's voice stayed level but firm. "She is staying, Garrett. That is my decision." "Then you are a fool. Do not come crying to me when you wake up with a knife in your ribs." Garrett remounted and rode off without another word. Thorne stood watching him go, then turned and looked directly at where Thalra was hidden. She stepped out slowly, feeling exposed. "Sorry about that," Thorne said. "He means well mostly, just set in his thinking. He is not wrong to be suspicious." Thalra kept her hand away from her knife, conscious of the irony. "I am orc. His people and mine have been killing each other for generations, and it has gotten us exactly nowhere except dead and grieving." Thorne started walking back toward the work site. "I am tired of that story. Figure it is time for a new one." Thalra followed him, something warm and complicated unfurling in her chest. She did not have words for it, so she picked up her axe and returned to work. When the week ended, neither of them mentioned it. Thalra stayed. Another week passed, then another. The work continued, steady and consuming. They extended the garden, reinforced the fences, began preparing for harvest. Thorne taught Thalra about human farming techniques, and she showed him orc methods for preserving meat and identifying edible plants in the forest. They became a team without ever deciding to be one. Slowly, Thalra began to notice things she had not let herself see before. The way Thorne's eyes crinkled when he found something genuinely amusing. The careful way he maintained his tools, cleaning and sharpening them each evening. The small herb garden he kept near the cabin door, plants chosen for medicine and flavor. The way he sometimes stood at the edge of his land at sunset, looking south toward where the war had been, his expression distant and sad. She noticed, and tried not to notice that she was noticing. This was temporary. She was only here until she regained her strength and figured out where to go next. Getting attached, getting comfortable, that was how you got hurt. But on a warm evening 3 weeks into her stay, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Thorne said something that made her walls crack. "You know you can stay as long as you want, right? Not just for the work, just if you want to." Thalra looked at him sharply. "Why would you offer that?" "Because you have got nowhere else to go and I have got more space than I need. Because you are good company and a hard worker. Because it is nice not being alone all the time." He poked at the fire with a stick. "Because maybe we both deserve a place to rest after everything, if you want it." She did want it. That was the terrifying part. She wanted to stay in this quiet place with this strange, kind human who did not flinch from her tusks and did not treat her like a monster. She wanted the simple routine, the honest work, the peace she had found here. "I am still exiled," she said, testing the shape of the idea. "I cannot go back to my people. If I stay here, I am choosing to live among humans. That makes me a traitor twice over. Or it makes you someone choosing her own path instead of letting others choose for you." Thorne met her eyes across the fire. What do you want, Thalra? Not your clan, not the humans who might judge you. What do you want? No one had asked her that in so long she had almost forgotten it was a question that could be asked. What did she want? Not survival, not anymore. She had that here. Something more, then. Something she barely dared to name. I want to stay, she said quietly. For now, if the offer is real, it is real. You have my word. That night, Thalra lay in the shed that had become her room and let herself imagine a future. Not forever, she was not ready for that. But seasons, maybe. A winter here learning to weather the cold with human methods. A spring helping plant new crops. Time enough to figure out who she was now that she was not defined by her clan. The next morning, Thorne told her about the harvest. It is going to be brutal, he said over breakfast. Everything coming in at once. Probably 2 solid weeks of dawn to dusk work. But if we can get it all brought in and stored properly, we will have food enough for the winter and surplus to trade. We, Thalra repeated. We, Thorne confirmed. You are part of this now if you are staying, which means you share in the results. Fair trade for the work. I am already getting food and shelter, and earning it 3 times over. Do not argue, I have already decided. He said it with mock sternness that made her want to smile. Besides, if you are going to winter here, you will need warmer clothes. Trading the surplus can get us both what we need. Winter here. He said it so casually, like it was already settled. Maybe it was. Thalra found she did not mind as much as she should. The harvest was every bit as intense as Thorne had warned. The vegetables came in heavily, squash and beans and roots and greens. They picked and hauled and sorted from sunrise to well past sunset, falling into bed exhausted only to rise and do it again. Thorne worked with fierce determination, and Thalra matched him, her orc stamina proving invaluable. On the 5th day of harvest, as they worked side by side pulling carrots, their hands brushed in the soil. It was a brief touch, meaningless, the kind of accidental contact that happened when 2 people worked closely. But Thalra felt it like a shock through her whole arm. She pulled back quickly, focusing intently on the carrots. But she was aware of Thorne beside her in a new way, a hyper-awareness that made her clumsy. When had he become not just her employer and reluctant host, but someone whose presence made her pulse quicken? This was dangerous. More dangerous than hunger, than exile, than any of the physical threats she had faced. She could not afford feelings, not for a human, not for anyone. That path led only to more pain, but the feelings, it seemed, did not care what she could afford. Another week into harvest, a storm rolled in from the east. They saw it coming all morning, dark clouds piling up on the horizon. Thorne eyed it with concern as they worked frantically to bring in as much as possible before the rain hit. If this gets bad, use the cabin, he said as the first drops started to fall. The shed might leak. I will be fine. Thalra, I am serious. If it is a real storm, do not be stubborn about it. The rain started in earnest before they could finish arguing, fat drops that quickly became a downpour. They ran for cover, Thalra to the shed and Thorne to the cabin. Within minutes, Thalra discovered he had been right. Water came through gaps in the roof in several places, and the wind drove rain through the wallboards. She gathered her few belongings and, swallowing her pride, dashed through the storm to the cabin door. She knocked, and Thorne answered immediately, leaking like a sieve. Come on. He stepped back to let her in. The cabin was warm and dry, a single room with a bed in one corner, a table and chairs, shelves of supplies, and a stone fireplace. Thorne had a fire going, and the light danced across the space. It was cozy in a way that made Thalra's chest ache. You can take the bed, Thorne said, already pulling blankets from a chest. I will make a pallet on the floor. Absolutely not. This is your home. The floor is fine for me. They argued about it while the storm raged outside, neither willing to take the bed at the other's expense. Finally, they agreed to both sleep on the floor, Thorne by the fire and Thalra near the door. It was ridiculous and awkward, and Thalra was far too aware of him a few feet away in the darkness. The storm lasted through the night and into the next day. They were trapped inside together, unable to work. Thorne cooked meals on the fire and tried to do small repair tasks while Thalra attempted to stay out of the way in the small space. But there was only so much avoiding two people could do in a single room. "Tell me about your clan," Thorne said in the afternoon, as rain continued to hammer the roof. What was it like before the exile? Thalra had avoided thinking about it, but something about the enforced closeness made her willing to talk. She told him about the Ironbark clan, about their traditions and training methods. She described her father's forge, the way the metal sang under his hammer, her mother's skill with healing herbs, her younger brother who had been so proud when she earned her warrior name. "You miss them?" Thorne asked quietly. "Every day. Even knowing they would kill me if I returned, I miss them." She stared at the fire. "Do you miss your family all the time? And I miss the man I was before the war, before I learned how easy it is to kill." He was quiet for a moment. "That is part of why I came here. Wanted to see if I could find that person again, or at least someone better." "Have you? Getting there, maybe. Some days." He looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "Easier with you here. Feels less like hiding and more like building something." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Thalra looked away first, her heart beating too fast. The storm broke that night, and morning came clear and cool. They returned to the harvest work, but something had shifted. Thalra caught herself watching Thorne when he was not looking, noticing the strength in his arms as he lifted heavy baskets, the way his hair fell into his eyes when he bent over the plants, the sound of his laughter when she made a dry observation about stubborn squash plants. She was falling for him, had probably been falling since that first night when he fed her and gave back her knife. The realization terrified her. It was impossible. They were from different worlds, different species. A human and an orc, natural enemies despite their personal peace. Even if he felt the same, which she absolutely could not let herself believe, there was no future in it. They would be shunned by both their peoples, forever outsiders. But when he smiled at her over dinner, when his hand steadied her elbow as she climbed over a fence, when he automatically included her in every plan he made, she felt hope rise like a flame against her ribs. The harvest finally ended. They had brought in more than Thorne had dreamed, the storage cellar and cabin packed with preserved food. They both ached in every muscle, but it was the satisfied ache of hard work completed. "We did it," Thorne said, surveying the results. "I could not have managed a quarter of this alone." "Thank you, Thalra. I should be thanking you. You took in a starving exile and gave her purpose." Thalra looked at the stores, thinking of the winter they represented. "This is enough for two people, easily." "That is the idea." Thorne's voice was carefully casual. "Figured we are a good team. Makes sense to stick together. Through winter. And after, if you want. I mean it, Thalra. You have a place here, for as long as you want it." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that this strange peace they had built could last, but doubt nagged at her, the old fear of loss. "You do not owe me anything," she said. "You have already given more than was warranted for some labor. This is not about owing. This is about wanting you to stay." Thorne moved closer, his expression open and earnest. "You belong here, Thalra. I have never been more sure of anything." "I am Orc." She said it flatly, forcing him to confront reality. "Your neighbors already disapprove. What happens when more people find out? When word spreads that Thorne Quillen keeps an Orc woman on his land? Then word spreads. I do not care. You should care. They could run you out. Destroy what you have built. Let them try. There was steel in his voice now. I did not survive a war and come out here to build a life just to let small-minded people dictate how I live. You stay or go based on what you want, not on what others might think. Thalra stared at him, something fierce and fragile blooming in her chest. Why does it matter so much to you? Because you matter to me. The words came out raw, honest. These past months, having you here, working with you, talking with you, it has made me happier than I have been in years. I like who I am when you are around, and I think maybe you might feel the same way. Her breath caught. This was the moment, the confession she had been both hoping for and dreading. She could deflect, make a joke, pretend she did not understand what he was really saying. Or she could be as brave as she had been when she saved that human child, when she accepted exile rather than deny her own conscience. I do, she said quietly, feel the same way, which is terrifying. Why terrifying? Because I have already lost one family for choosing compassion over hate. If I let myself care for you, truly care, and something happens, if you change your mind or I have to leave, it will break something in me that will not heal. Her voice shook despite her effort to control it. I cannot lose again, Thorne. I am not strong enough. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, and before she could react, he took her hands in his. His palms were warm and calloused, rough from the same work that had roughened hers. Then we do not lose, he said firmly. We hold on. We build something strong enough to weather whatever comes, together. You make it sound simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. I care about you, Thalra, not despite what you are, but including all of it. I want you here. I want to see what we can build together. If you want that too, then we figure out the rest as we go. She looked down at their joined hands, green skin against tan, orc and human. It should not work. By all the rules of both their peoples, this was wrong, but it felt more right than anything she had known since her exile. I want that, she whispered. I want you, even though it is probably foolish. Well, I have always been a bit of a fool. Thorne grinned, and she felt an answering smile tug at her mouth despite the fear. We can be foolish together. Then he was pulling her closer and she was letting him, and when he cupped her face with one hand, she leaned into the touch like a flower to sunlight. His thumb brushed over the small tusk that protruded from her lower lip, gentle and curious. Is this all right? He asked. Yes. He kissed her then, soft and careful, giving her every chance to pull away. But Thalra did not want to pull away. She wound her arms around his neck and kissed him back, pouring weeks of unspoken longing into the contact. He tasted like the mint tea he favored, and his hand spread warm across her back, holding her like something precious. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Thorne rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he said. Please. Not as someone I hired for labor, but as my partner. In all of this, stay and build a life here with me. Yes, Thalra said, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. Yes, I will stay. That night she did not return to the shed. She and Thorne sat up late by the fire, talking in low voices about everything and nothing. They kissed again, slow and exploratory, learning each other. When they finally slept, it was in his bed together, her back against his chest and his arm draped over her waist. Safe and warm and together. In the morning, Thalra woke to find Thorne already up making breakfast. He smiled when he saw her, a smile that lit his whole face, and she felt her heart expand painfully with affection. This was real. This was happening. She was choosing this man, this life, and he was choosing her back. The days that followed fell into a new rhythm. They still worked hard, but now there was an ease between them, a comfortable domesticity. Thalra moved her few possessions into the cabin. They cooked together, ate together, fell into bed together each night. Thorne taught her more about farming, and she taught him the orc language, laughing at his pronunciation. The first snow came in late autumn, light flurries that dusted the cleared fields. They stood together watching it fall, Thorne's arm around her shoulders. "Never thought I would be here," Thalra said quietly. "Happy, with a human man I have come to love in a place I can call home." "Love?" Thorne turned her to face him, his eyes searching hers. She had said it without thinking, but she did not take it back. "Yes, love, is that all right?" "It is more than all right." He kissed her soft and sweet. "Because I love you too, have for a while now, I think, was just waiting for the right moment to say it. This seems like the right moment. Perfect moment." They kissed again as the snow fell around them. Two people who should have been enemies, who had found in each other something precious enough to defy the expectations of their entire world. Winter settled in deep and cold, but the cabin stayed warm. They had plenty of food, plenty of firewood, and each other. On the longest nights they lay in bed and shared stories of their pasts, their fears, their dreams. Thorne told her about friends he had lost in the war, the guilt he still carried. Thalra spoke of her family, the ache of exile that was slowly being replaced by the home she was building here. "You think your clan will ever forgive you?" Thorne asked one night. "No, exile is forever." Thalra traced patterns on his chest idly. "But I have forgiven myself, I think. Saving that child was right. This being with you is right. I cannot regret choices I believe in, even if they cost me everything I knew. You are the bravest person I have ever met. I am not brave. I am just trying to live honestly." "That is what bravery is," Thorne insisted. "Choosing truth even when it is hard." Midwinter brought an unexpected visitor. They heard the horse before they saw it, hooves crunching in snow. Thorne opened the door to find a woman in the thick furs and leather of the territorial patrol. She was young, maybe 25, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Thorne Quillen?" she asked. "That is me." "Officer Marina Prescott, Territorial Patrol. We have received reports of an orc on your property. I need to verify the situation." Her gaze moved past him to where Thalra stood by the fire, and her hand moved to her sword hilt. "She is here legally," Thorne said firmly, not moving from the doorway. "Working my land with my permission. No laws against that. No laws, but it is unusual enough to warrant investigation." Marina's eyes never left Thalra. "You are far from clan lands, orc. What are you doing here?" "Living," Thalra said evenly. "Working, same as anyone. You are exiled." Marina's tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Yes, for helping a human child. My clan considered it betrayal." That made Marina pause. "You helped a human, got her safely to the border. She was lost and scared. It was the right thing to do." Thalra lifted her chin. "And yes, I know that makes me a traitor to my people. They have already cast their judgment. What is yours?" Marina studied them both for a long moment. Thorne stood protective in the doorway, and Thalra met her gaze without flinching. Finally, the officer sighed. "Honestly, I think the world would be a better place if more people on both sides made your kind of choices." She removed her hand from her sword. "I will report that you are here, but there is no threat, no law being broken. You should know, though, word will spread. Some folks are not going to like it." "Let them not like it from a distance," Thorne said. "We are not hurting anyone." "No, I do not believe you are." Marina nodded to them both. "Stay safe. Winter is a dangerous time to be on the frontier, especially for those who are different." She rode away, and Thorne closed the door. He turned to Thalra, concerned. "Are you all right?" "Yes." She was fair, more than I expected. Thalra moved into his arms, letting him hold her. "But she was right, that word will spread. This will get harder before it gets easier." "Then we face it together," Thorne said into her hair. "Whatever comes, we face it together. Word did spread. As winter eased toward spring, they began to get more visitors. Some were merely curious, coming to see the spectacle of a human and orc living together. Others were openly hostile. Garrett came back twice, trying to convince Thorne he was making a mistake. A group of young men from a settlement 2 days west rode up making threats until Thorne, who had been a soldier and still remembered how to be dangerous, convinced them to leave through it all. Thalra and Thorne stood firm. This was their land, their life, their choice. They weathered the disapproval and the few attempts at intimidation, presenting a united front, but the pressure weighed on Thalra. She knew what it cost Thorne to stand against his own people for her sake. She knew the isolation was only going to deepen. On a cool spring morning, as they worked turning soil for planting, she brought up her fears. "What if this ruins you?" she asked. "What if they refuse to trade with you, or worse? I could not bear it if I destroyed the life you built here. You have not destroyed anything. You have made it worth living." Thorne leaned on his shovel. "Yes, some people are being difficult, but others have been quietly supportive. That farmer 6 days south sent a message saying he respected what we were doing. The trader who comes through in summer said she did not care who I lived with as long as my goods were quality. That is 2 people against dozens who disapprove. So we find the good people and stick with them. Thalra, listen to me." He took her hands, making her look at him. "I love you. Not just sort of, not just for now. Truly and deeply love you. What we have is worth any amount of social disapproval. Please believe that." She wanted to. But the scars of exile ran deep, and she could not shake the fear that she was poison to everything she touched. Spring brought another visitor, one neither of them expected. Thalra was at the creek washing clothes when she heard a sound that froze her blood. The low, rhythmic chant of orc war drums, distant but unmistakable. She ran back to the cabin where Thorne was repairing a fence rail. "Orcs are coming." A war party from the sound of it. His face went grim. "How many?" "I cannot tell from the drums alone, but they are close, maybe an hour away. Could they be looking for you, possibly? Or they could be raiding human settlements and we are just in the path." Thalra grabbed her knife, the one her father had made, still sharp and deadly after all these months. "You should hide. They will kill you on sight. I am not hiding and leaving you to face them alone. Thorne, these are warriors, trained since childhood. You cannot fight them." "I can fight beside you." He went into the cabin and came out with his own weapons, a sword from his soldier days and a long knife. "We defend our home, together." There was no time to argue. The drums grew louder, and within 20 minutes a group of 6 orcs emerged from the tree line. They were in full war gear, painted and armed, moving with the coordinated precision of an experienced unit. At their head was a tall orc woman with silver-shot black hair and a face Thalra knew like her own, her mother. "Irana," Thalra breathed, too shocked to move. The war party stopped 50 feet from the cabin. Irana stepped forward and her eyes, the same amber color as Thalra's, swept over the scene. Her daughter standing beside a human man, both armed, both positioned to defend the small homestead. "Thalra Penwood," Irana said, her voice carrying easily. "Exile and oathbreaker, we have been searching for you. To kill me," Thalra kept her voice steady. "I am already exiled. What more vengeance does the clan need? Not vengeance. Information." Irana gestured and the other orcs relaxed slightly, though they remained alert. "The human child you saved. She spoke of you to her family, told them how an orc warrior protected her. The story spread. It reached human settlements near our territory, and attitudes began to shift. Some humans are calling for peace talks." Thalra blinked, unable to process what she was hearing. "Peace talks. The clan elders are considering it, but they need to know if the story is true, if you truly acted with honor rather than cowardice." Irana's gaze moved to Thorne. And now I find you living with a human, fighting beside him. This complicates things. I love him, Thalra said clearly. He has shown me more honor and kindness than I ever received from the clan that exiled me. If that complicates things, so be it. I see. Irana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Your father regrets speaking the exile words. He was following tradition, but he has grieved for you every day since. He wanted to send me to find you to see if you were well. Tears stung Thalra's eyes, but she blinked them back. I am well, better than I have been in years. And this human. He treats you with respect. He treats me with love. Thalra looked at Thorne, who stood solid and unafraid beside her despite facing a group of orc warriors. He gave me food when I was starving, shelter when I had nowhere to go, and a home when I thought I would never have one again. Irana's expression shifted, something like approval flickering across her face. She looked at Thorne directly. You know she is exiled, that taking her in marks you as well in orc eyes. I know, Thorne said steadily. Do not care. She is mine to protect now, and I am hers. That is all that matters. Brave words for a human facing orc warriors. Honest words. Your daughter is the best thing that ever happened to me. I would fight the whole of your clan if I had to. One of the other orcs made a sound that might have been a laugh. Irana's lips twitched. You would lose, but it is a good answer. She turned back to Thalra. The exile stands. That is not within my power to change, but I can take word back that you live with honor, that the story of your mercy was true. It may help with the peace talks. Peace talks, Thalra repeated, still struggling to believe it. After all these years of war. Your action saved a human child. That human child spoke of orc honor to her people. Sometimes one small act of courage changes more than 100 battles. Irana stepped closer, stopping just beyond sword range. I cannot give you back your place in the clan, but I can tell you that your father loves you still, that your brother speaks your name with pride, that your mother stands before you wishing things were different. Thalra's breath caught. You are my mother. I am, and I have missed you more than words can say. Irana's voice was rough with emotion. But I cannot defy the exile. This is all I can offer. Knowledge that you are not forgotten and that your choice to save that child may lead to something better for all of us. It is enough, Thalra whispered. It has to be enough. Live well, daughter. Love fiercely. Perhaps one day, if the world changes enough, there can be more. Irana raised her hand in the orc gesture of respect. You have more honor than most warriors I have known. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Then she was turning, leading her war party back into the forest. Within minutes, they had disappeared as thoroughly as if they had never been there. Thalra stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Thorne wrapped his arms around her and she collapsed against him, sobbing. All the grief and loss she had held inside came pouring out. He held her through it, murmuring reassurances, his hand stroking her hair. I am sorry, she gasped when she could speak again. I am sorry. I should be stronger than this. You are the strongest person I know, but even the strong need to cry sometimes. He kissed her forehead. Your family loves you. They cannot give you back your old life, but they love you. That is worth tears. She clung to him, this human man who had become her whole world, and let herself grieve and hope in equal measure. Her old life was gone forever, but maybe, just maybe, the choice she had made might lead to something better for everyone. Summer came full and warm. They planted the expanded garden, worked the land, and slowly began to see the fruits of their labor. The trader who came through in midsummer was friendly and fair, untroubled by Thalra's presence. Word continued to spread about them, the human and orc living together on the frontier. And while some people disapproved, Others seemed intrigued or quietly supportive. In late summer, a messenger arrived from the territorial capital with an official letter. Thorne opened it while Thalra watched nervously. What does it say? It says that peace talks between human settlements and the Ironbark Orc clan are scheduled for autumn. They are asking if we would be willing to attend, to speak about our experience living in peace. Thorne looked up, his eyes bright. They are using us as an example, Thalra. We are proof it can work. She took the letter, reading it herself. It was formal and careful, but the message was clear. Their unlikely partnership had become a symbol of possibility. We could help end the war, she said slowly, or at least start to. Only if you want to. I know this is complicated with your exile. Thalra thought about the child she had saved, about her mother's words, about the life she and Thorne had built against all odds. I want to. If there is a chance for peace, I want to be part of making it happen. They wrote back accepting the invitation. As the days counted down to autumn, they prepared. Thalra told Thorne everything she could remember about Orc customs and diplomacy. He shared what he knew of human political structures from his military days. They practiced what they would say, how they would present their story. The peace talks were held in a neutral location, a meadow midway between Orc clan lands and the nearest human settlement. A large tent had been erected, and guards from both sides watched warily. Thalra and Thorne arrived together, both nervous but determined. Inside the tent, clan elders sat on one side, human leaders on the other. Thalra's breath caught when she saw her father among the Orc delegation. He looked older, his tusks more worn, but his eyes locked on her with an intensity that spoke volumes. She and Thorne were asked to sit at a small table between the two groups. For 3 hours, they answered questions and told their story, how they had met, how they had built trust, how they had learned to see past the barriers of species and history to find common ground. You claim to love each other, one human official said skeptically. How is that possible when your peoples have been at war for generations? Love does not require permission from history, Thorne said firmly. It just requires two people willing to be honest and brave. Thalra has both those qualities in abundance. And your clan cast you out for saving a human child, an Orc elder said to Thalra. Do you regret that choice? No. Thalra met the elder's eyes steadily. That child deserved to live, to go home to her family. My exile was the price of her life, and I would pay it again. But I hope that my exile can also be the price of peace, that my choice can help build something better. Her father spoke then, his voice rough. My daughter acted with more honor than I did. She chose mercy over hatred. I should have celebrated that, not punished it. The exile was a mistake. A murmur ran through both groups. For a clan leader to admit error was almost unheard of. Then you would welcome her back, a human asked. I would welcome peace, Thalra's father said carefully. And if part of that peace means acknowledging that exile for mercy was wrong, then yes, I would welcome my daughter back. But that is for her to choose, not for me to demand. All eyes turned to Thalra. She looked at her father, seeing the regret in his face. Then she looked at Thorne, whose hand rested on hers under the table. I am grateful for the offer, she said slowly, but my home is with Thorne now. We have built a life together on his land, and I do not wish to leave it. However, if the clans and the settlements can agree to peace, perhaps I can be part of that. A bridge between worlds. More discussion followed, hours of debate and negotiation. But by the time the sun set, a tentative agreement had been reached. A ceasefire to start, trade negotiations, cultural exchanges. And Thalra and Thorne, should they choose, could serve as ambassadors of sorts, proof that cooperation was possible. As people filed out of the tent, Thalra's father approached. He and Thalra stood facing each other, the weight of loss and time between them. "I am proud of you," he said quietly. "I should have said that moons ago, but I say it now. You are a warrior of true honor. Thank you, Father." Thalra's voice was thick. "That means more than you know." He reached out and clasped her shoulder briefly, the closest he could come to an embrace in this formal setting. Then he was gone, rejoining his delegation. Thorne appeared at her side. "You all right?" "I am. I think for the first time since the exile I am truly all right." She leaned into him. "Ready to go home, always." They rode back to the cabin as autumn colors blazed around them. The work of peace would continue, would be long and difficult, but they had played their part. They had shown it was possible. That night, as they lay in bed together, Thorne pulled something from under his pillow, a small carved wooden box. "I made this," he said, suddenly shy. "Over the summer. Wanted to wait for the right time." Thalra opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple hammered silver with a small green stone set in it. "It is not much," Thorne said quickly. "I am not a jeweler. But the stone is from the creek where you washed the first morning you stayed, and I thought, if you wanted, maybe we could make this official. In human custom, this is a proposal. I am asking you to marry me, to be my wife, to build our whole lives together. What do you say?" Thalra looked at the ring, at this man who had saved her in every way that mattered, and felt her heart overflow. "Yes," she said. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the future stretched before them, bright and full of possibility. They were married a month later in a simple ceremony by the cabin. The trader served as witness along with 2 farmers from the east who had become friendly. It was not a large celebration, but it was full of love and hope. As winter approached again, Thalra stood in the doorway of their cabin looking out at the land they had worked together. Thorne's arms came around her from behind and she leaned back against him. "Happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be." She turned in his arms to face him. "You gave me back my knife that first night, but you gave me so much more than that. You gave me a home, a future, a place to belong. You gave me yourself. You gave me the same, a reason to be more than I was, a purpose beyond just surviving." He kissed her softly. "We saved each other, I think." "We did." Snow began to fall, light flakes drifting down in the twilight. They stood together watching it, warm and safe and together. The wars were not over, the prejudices had not vanished, but they had proven that love was possible across every divide. And in doing so, they had helped light the way for others. Spring came again, as it always did, bringing new growth and new possibilities. Thalra discovered she was pregnant in early summer, and the joy on Thorne's face made her laugh and cry at once. Their child would be born into a world still learning to make peace, but it would be a world moving in the right direction. When autumn brought another round of peace talks, they attended together, Thalra's pregnancy visible now. The sight of a human and orc expecting a child together moved many to tears on both sides. It was proof, undeniable and powerful, that they were not so different after all. The child, a daughter, was born in the first days of winter. She had her mother's green skin and her father's brown eyes, and when both sets of grandparents came to visit, bringing gifts from both cultures, Thalra held her baby and wept with gratitude. "She will never know exile," Thalra whispered to Thorne as they stood watching their daughter sleep. "She will grow up knowing both worlds, belonging to both. She will grow up knowing love," Thorne said. "That is what matters most." Years passed. The peace held and slowly deepened. Trade routes opened between human and orc territories. Cultural exchange programs began. The wars faded into history, becoming stories rather than lived experience. Thalra and Thorne's farm prospered. They raised their daughter and later, 2 sons, teaching them to value both their heritages. Their home became a stopping point for travelers between the territories, a place where humans and orcs could meet on neutral ground and learn about each other. On warm evenings, Thalra would sometimes take out the knife her father had made, the one she had offered to trade for supper a lifetime ago. She would run her fingers over the blade, remembering that desperate, starving girl who had stumbled into Thorne's firelight. How far she had come since then. How much she had found. "What are you thinking about?" Thorne asked one such evening, coming to sit beside her on the porch they had built together. That first night, how I thought I was trading my last valuable possession for one meal. Thalra smiled, setting the knife aside to take his hand. "I had no idea I was beginning something precious beyond measure." "I knew," Thorne said. "Well, not immediately, but when I handed your knife back, when I saw the way you looked at me, like you could not comprehend kindness, I knew I wanted to be the one to show you it existed. You showed me so much more than kindness. You showed me love, partnership, hope." Thalra leaned her head on his shoulder. "You showed me home." Their children played in the yard, human and orc friends from neighboring farms playing alongside them. The sun set over fields they had planted together, and smoke rose from chimneys of houses built by both species working side by side. The world they had helped create was not perfect, but it was better. So much better. "You ever regret it?" Thorne asked quietly. "Leaving your clan, choosing this life?" "Never, not for a single moment." Thalra squeezed his hand. "Every choice that led me here was worth it. Every hardship, every loss, all of it was worth it to end up here with you." "I love you," he said, as he had said countless times over the years. But it never got old, never lost its power to warm her. "I love you too," she replied. "Always." As darkness fell, they went inside together to the home they had built, the life they had chosen, the future they had made possible. And in that small cabin on the frontier, surrounded by the evidence of their love and their work, Thalra Penwood and Thorne Quillen sat down to dinner together. She set the table while he served the food, their movements practiced and easy after so many years. They ate and talked about their day, made plans for tomorrow, laughed at their children's antics. It was simple and ordinary and absolutely extraordinary. Later, in bed with Thorne's arms around her, Thalra thought about the young girl who had once traded her last blade for supper. That girl could never have imagined this, the complete and perfect happiness of a life well lived. But that girl's courage, her willingness to help a child at the cost of everything she knew, had set in motion a chain of events that changed the world. Sometimes the smallest acts of mercy had the largest consequences. Sometimes one moment of kindness could reshape a future. And sometimes, when you were at your lowest point and thought you had nothing left to offer, the universe gave you exactly what you needed. For Thalra, that had been Thorne. He had fed her when she was starving, given her shelter when she was homeless, and handed back her knife when she expected nothing. But more than that, he had given her a reason to keep going, to believe in possibility, to trust in love, and she had given him the same. Outside, the frontier stretched vast and wild under the stars. Inside, 2 people who had defied every expectation slept peacefully, their children safe in nearby rooms, their home warm and secure. They had built something beautiful from nothing but courage and hope and stubborn determination. The blade Thalra had offered to trade that first desperate night hung now above their fireplace, a reminder of where they had started. But it was no longer a tool of war or a last possession of value. It was a symbol of transformation, of how something meant for violence could be reclaimed for peace, just like them, just like their whole impossible, wonderful life. And as snow began to fall again, beginning another winter that they would face together, Thalra smiled in her sleep. She was home. Finally, truly, completely home. The story of the orc girl who bargained her last blade for supper and the human man who fed her and handed the knife back became a legend in both cultures. Parents told it to their children as a lesson in compassion. Elders referenced it in peace negotiations. It was painted on walls and sung in ballads, the tale of how two people from enemy worlds had chosen each other and, in doing so, had helped heal the divisions between their peoples. But for Thalra and Thorne, it was not a legend. It was just their life, the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life they had built together from nothing but love and hope, and the kind of courage that looks like simple decency. And they lived it fully, gratefully. Every single day, years turned to decades. Their children grew and had children of their own, continuing the bridge between worlds. The peace deepened until it was not peace so much as normal, the default state of things. New generations grew up unable to imagine their parents' people at war. Thalra and Thorne grew old together, their hands weathered but still clasped, their love deeper and stronger with each passing season. On their 50th anniversary, their grandchildren asked them to tell the story again, how they had met. "Well," Thorne said, his voice still strong despite his years, "it started with hunger and kindness." "And a knife," Thalra added, smiling at him with all the love of 5 decades together. "Do not forget the knife." "How could I forget? That blade is part of our family now." Thorne looked at their assembled descendants, human and orc and everything in between. "Your grandmother came to me with nothing left but her pride and her father's knife. She offered to trade it for supper. And I thought, here is a person at the end of their rope still trying to face the world with dignity, so I fed her. And gave back the knife," Thalra continued, "which changed everything. That one act of unexpected kindness opened a door I thought was closed forever." "We saved each other," Thorne said simply, "found in each other what we both desperately needed. A home, a future, a reason to believe the world could be better." Their youngest grandchild, a small boy with his grandmother's green skin and his grandfather's gentle eyes, piped up. "And then you fell in love and had adventures and made peace happen." "Something like that," Thalra agreed, "though it was less adventurous and more a lot of hard work growing vegetables and learning to trust each other." "But yes," Thorne added, pulling Thalra close, "we fell in love." "That part is absolutely true." They kissed, these two old people who had started as enemies and become each other's everything, and their family cheered. It was a good story, their grandchildren agreed. The best story, and it was made better by being true. Thalra and Thorne lived many more years, until they were ancient and revered in both human and orc communities. When they finally passed, within days of each other as such deeply bonded pairs sometimes did, they were mourned by both peoples. Their funeral was attended by hundreds, and the knife that had started it all was placed in a museum as a symbol of hope and change. But their true legacy was not in museums or stories. It was in the world they had helped create, the peace they had nurtured, the love they had proved was possible. It was in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, living proof that differences could be not just tolerated but celebrated. The farm they had built together was maintained by their descendants, who kept it as a reminder and a sanctuary. And on quiet evenings, people swore they could sometimes see 2 figures sitting on the old porch, green skin and tan, holding hands and watching the sunset together. Whether that was truth or hopeful imagination did not really matter. What mattered was that Thalra and Thorne had lived, had loved, and had shown the world what was possible when you chose compassion over fear, when you handed back the knife instead of keeping it, when you fed the hungry stranger and saw in them not an enemy but a future friend. Their story ended as all stories must, but the ripples of what they had begun continued outward forever, touching lives they would never know, making possible futures they could barely imagine. And that, in the end, was the greatest gift of all. The orc girl had bargained her last blade for supper. The human man had fed her and handed the knife back. And from that one moment of grace, a whole new world had grown,